And we are live from the dark side of the moon. I guess that's my Pink Floyd reference right there. I love Pink Floyd, especially the song "Leaves Our Kids Alone." I don't know the name of that song. Anyways, thanks for coming in. I hope you're doing fantastic today.
Thank you.
It's Monday, February 16th. Good Happy Family Day.
Yes, Happy Family Day. That's right.
Happy Family. Yeah, I just forgot about that holiday. There is Happy Holiday, Happy Family Day. So that's going to be fantastic. So the February 16, 2026. And this is a follow-up interview that we have a while ago with Angela and Kathy Flett. Kathy that you've seen many times in Sherwood Park, Edmonton. She's doing terrific and amazing speeches on independence, and also Angela as well. And so thanks for coming. I hope you're doing fantastic today.
Thank you.
So before moving forward, just a shameless plug here. I just want to tell everybody that Freedom Canada is officially on Spotify. So if you're driving your truck up in the north and going to grab something along the road or whatever, you can listen to the live stream after this. That will be on Spotify. The links in the description are below. So if you want to take a look at this, and I'm also on Instagram as well. So if you want to take a look at this as well. So basically on Instagram and as well as Spotify are the new additions to the team. So when I do my propaganda warfare, I can shoot on 7 platforms now, which is excellent.
Nice.
And I think, listen, you were mentioning something. I think, Kathy, about the live stream for the 10 minutes thing. What's up? What's wrong with this thing?
What's wrong? Someone was just asking me why it is when they're watching the recording of the live stream, why the 10 minutes has to still be on the recording, why you can't cut it out.
Technical limitations. You have to blame X for that and Facebook. When I do a live stream, and this is not just my problem. Many podcasters have this problem. What happens is that if I start the live stream at 7 sharp, what's going to happen is that you're going to lose like the first 3 minutes of the live stream, because basically X and Facebook, they don't necessarily start the live stream at the same time. They eat like 3 or 4 minutes of the live stream. So by starting 10 minutes ahead, there's no way that people will actually lose the first 2 or 3 minutes. And also, I use that 10-minute buffer to sort of share the video on Facebook specifically, so people can replicate that to other platforms. So it's basically a technical issue, right? But it's more like an issue you have to blame X and Facebook for that. Unfortunately, I don't have control of those platforms. I just shoot that to whoever wants to take the stream, but there is actually a technical limitation that eventually they'll have this thing sorted out, and looking forward to see that again. So, but that's the reason.
There you go.
This is not something that I hear all the time. But it's sometimes that people see, especially my viewers, like, how is it that you're waiting 10 minutes for your live stream? Well, that's it. So,
yep.
So without further ado, let's go through the whole program. So as I mentioned, you were there, I think, before. Kathy, I've met you many times. You were doing amazing speeches. I think the last one was in Leduc, wasn't it?
Yeah.
With Jason?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That turned to be that actually made amazing clips, by the way. Many of the clips are actually shared by lots of people, and the reaction from the Forever Canadian crowd was absolutely juicy and very funny to see. But I haven't.
Got a little spicy, yeah. Got a little spicy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but I haven't actually heard Angela though, which is gonna be funny. I think you're gonna be in March the 2nd. Is that right?
March 2nd in Olds with Jason Levine and Marty up north.
Oh yeah, I think Jason talked to me about that event too as well. So that's going to be very interesting to see what Angela will say from a different perspective, because what's cool about it is that Kathy, she has a very specific way of saying things.
Mhm.
Angela might have a different different way of saying things. So
Absolutely.
it's kind of cool. Yeah,
Yes,
so
she
when I see
does.
she does. Oh, that's
She
good.
does. Angela's much softer than I am.
Oh, really?
Mm.
Much softer.
Yeah, she's
Much.
much more pragmatic than I am.
We'll
So,
see.
we'll
Wait, actually, I'm going to get a glimpse of that. That's going to be fantastic. So,
Yeah.
for those of you who not necessarily know who Kathy and Angela are, those ladies are essentially representing a little group called the Alberta Women's Independence Network. Is that right?
That's correct.
So, can you just talk about, for the people who are not necessarily familiar, what you guys are doing, what you up, what kind of motivates you to doing this, how it started, all those things.
Sure. Go ahead,
for it.
Kathy.
Okay. So
We
as most-
can already see right now. Kat is gonna take the lead.
I know. Yeah. So I got into this space, into this independence movement, my gosh, quagmire, about 6 years ago, and jumped in with both feet, learned a lot along the way. And to make a long story short, along that journey, I got to make friends with Angela, and my life has just been beyond blessed ever since. We just hit it off. I don't even know how or why, or I can't even put a date on it. We just ended up working together, working really well together, building the Wild Rose Independence Party of Alberta, traveling all over the place, helping CAs grow and build and do all the things that CAs do. And then it imploded. Then we were sitting there going, okay, it imploded. Now what? Now what do we do? And it wasn't very long after that there was a provincial election, so we both decided to run as independents and shared a lot of resources and worked incredibly hard to lose. We knew that we would work really hard to lose, but the experience was amazing, absolutely amazing. And while we were door knocking, Angela's way down in the south by Waterton in Cardston area, and I'm of course in Sherwood Park. And we found out as we were door knocking that the independence movement hadn't gone anywhere. It was still very much alive and well, and people were hungry for it and wanting to know what was going on, who was going to take it on. And then we slept for about a month because we were exhausted from the campaign, and just sort of trying to figure, well, now what do we do? And some names began to pop up again. And with our history, we, some of those names we would be going, oh, okay, yeah, that's good. This is going to be good. I'm glad to see they're still in the game. And then there were some other names where we were going, oh boy, this is going to be a real dumpster fire if they get going. And so we were trying to figure out, where do we fit into this? Do we even fit into this? Are our days done? What do we do? And then Angela called me up one day with an idea, and I'll let her take it from there.
An idea.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, everything that Kathy said, that's correct. I joined into the movement a little after her. Again, yeah, but through the Wild Rose Independence Party.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it was, let me see, it would have been like a year ago November. I was kind of looking at the situation in Alberta and in the country as a whole, realizing that we're going to have another federal election coming up here pretty soon, and kind of wondering what effect that election was going to have on the Alberta independence movement. So I kind of figured it was going to go, one of two ways. Either we would have a Liberal government once again, and of course the Alberta independence movement and the sentiments around that movement would be on the rise if we were to be gifted with yet another Liberal government from the East, or, which we did, or the other option was that we would end up with a Conservative government, but it wouldn't take too long until people realized that it really doesn't matter who is in federal government. The system is set up in a way that nothing really changes, especially for the West. We would still be underrepresented in the Senate and the House of Commons. We would still have a lack of say as to who is on the Supreme Court, or even who is appointed to the Alberta courts, because those are all federal appointees. Nothing would change. And once again, it didn't matter what was going to happen. I felt that the independence movement was going to be on the rise again. So being a person of faith, I kind of took it to some prayer and some thought. And eventually the idea came to me in a very clear way that that I was to start a women's organization that really focused on education, focused on encouraging women, especially women who had not been involved in politics before, to become more educated about our system and to become more involved in whatever way. And that we were going to achieve this through, we're going to build community through like respectful dialogue and these types of things. And so I approached Kathy with this idea. And at first, she wasn't too happy about it.
She was like, "Oh no, what you want to do?"
No, I said no. We're not doing this. And no, there's got to be another way. And so Angela said, "Well, this is what I know. I heard the Lord say. So I'm going to ask you to go pray about it too." And the Lord said, "Roll up your sleeves, girl. Call her back. Let's do it." And so that's how it all came about.
And it's been good. Like, I was also kind of nervous about the idea of the women's organization. I was kind of like, well, what is that about? But it has really been such an amazing, this was not quite a year ago. We started in March of last year doing meetings. And basically we just asked women if they would like to invite some neighbors over, some friends, whatever, over to their home. And we show up and we do a real simple presentation. It doesn't take very long, but it is what I believe to be the basis of all discontent in Western Canada. It cuts to the core of everything. And if this one problem got fixed, everything else would fall into place after it as well. We wouldn't have the problems that we have with equalization and, oh my goodness, just everything we always talk about and hear about, all the problems, right? Those things would quickly disappear once this one issue was addressed. And if we were to get this one issue addressed properly, it would protect us from subsequent governments coming in and changing things up. So often we hear from Eastern Canadians that this is just a pipeline issue. And this has nothing to do with pipelines. It's nothing to do with pipelines. Pipelines are a symptom of the problem, but they are not the problem.
I've heard. I was in Calgary just about 2 or 3 days ago, and they have a panel, the Independence panel. I think with Richard Anderton, I think that's his name, and the two ladies from Homes and Home at Homes. And what they are, and I actually have a clip of that on social media. I was spread out like wildfire about the MOU and the pipeline. It's a symptom, exactly the same thing. And I think that the people down east, they have two approaches. One is you're a trader and yada yada yada. Okay, fine. And the other more approach was like, oh, but why don't you just can't get a better deal with Canada? Why don't you just negotiate those things without knowing that those discussions happened 20, 30 years ago?
Yeah.
And now we're essentially, in Alberta at least, people are essentially at the end of their rope and saying, we're done. But I'm totally agree on that, is that this sentiment of is just more than just a pipeline. I'm hearing from people all the time.
Yeah. And so that's basically what we started doing. We were meeting with people. I kind of started in my home, inviting some of my neighbors over. We always have dessert, our little byline or tagline or whatever it is. These conversations need dessert because they do. And we always ask the women that come, after the discussion, and it's just this really warm, amazing thing, really, as we kind of come to understanding together. and we feel that community and that strength starting to build between ourselves, then we just ask, would any of you like to do the same thing? Would you like to have some friends over to your house? And it just kind of took off like wildfire that way. And before we knew it, we were up in Grand Prairie. I think there was like a 3 or 4 day stint where we did a meeting in Grand Prairie. We did a meeting in Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. I thought we did something else that weekend. And then on Monday I was in Medicine Hat.
Right.
So it just really took off, and it's been just this amazing thing as we have met all these women and men across the province and been given the opportunity to speak to small groups and large groups.
It's not broken. It's working just as it's designed. Confederation is. But what does independence mean for my kids, for their future? What does it mean for my elderly parents that I'm taking care of? What does it mean for my community? What does it mean for my job? What does it mean for my husband's job? What does it mean for my pension? What does it mean for my, like, all the nurturing side of things? The ladies are wanting the answers to that. And so that's what we try to do, is say we don't always have the answers, but let's talk about it. Like, what could this look like? Let's dream a little bit and think about, what could healthcare look like? What could our schools look like for our kids? What could our streets without potholes be like to drive on? What might the long-term care centers be like for our aged parents? What if we were able to do whatever we wanted to do because we had a blank canvas? And the ladies love it. They just love it.
Interesting. So the women's approach will be more on perhaps the nurturing side of things, while I think for men, I can say to that, we're more on the head-on problems. Like, this is the problem we have.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, and I think that's a very interesting thing, because if I look at from a speech from Mitch Sylvester, or perhaps Jeff Rath or Chris Scott, what have you, even myself, we're always trying to, and I know because I'm doing my own speeches right now, I'm just writing them down to potentially do a town hall or something to that effect. But essentially, we guys are more like direct on the problem. Women, they have more this nurturing side of things that I think it's a good combination. And you also, Kathy, you mentioned about this dynamic from women, that one of the things that you said that one day was that when there are more women in a group, they tend to be open more than when there are men around it, or some that effect. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, that was one of the things actually Angela noticed first, and then she brought it up to me, and I went, oh, I'll pay attention to that a little bit more, and it's very true. So when we have a mixed group of men and women in the room, we noticed quite quickly that if there's more men in the room, the women won't talk as much. There's a few exceptions to that rule, but by and large, generally, the women won't talk as much. When their numbers are more even, then the conversation is a little bit more even, for sure. But when there's more women in the room, the women definitely dominate the conversation. They dominate the conversation. And so it was interesting for us to watch and say, okay, well, what's going on? How come? And the best we can come up with, and I keep saying, I'm hoping one day he hears it, I want to meet Jordan Peterson so he can give me the psychological answer to this question. But from our observations is that when you guys talk about things, you tend to be quite aggressive about it, because that's just a typical male demeanor. And when that aggression comes out, well, women tend to we don't like that aggression all the time. And so they just sort of sit down and let the guys duke it out and fight it out. Whereas when there aren't as many men in the room, then that allows the women to be able to speak and to be heard and to express themselves a little bit more, while the men feel like maybe they can't talk as much.
Interesting. And even when you go to a town hall meeting, let's say, I can talk about what the sense that I've seen from a town hall meeting that Kathy was doing. I don't know about Angela. With all due respect, I've never seen one of their speeches. I'm looking forward to do that.
I'm too far away.
Yeah, I'm up in the north. Okay, I'm the middle. That's Edmonton. The middle. That's Edmonton for real. But what I sense, like when I go, the dynamic from a town hall meeting, the regular town hall meeting, I see women coming with their husbands, maybe with their families or friends and such and such. So we always tend to see this like a 50-50 ratio between male and men and women most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
It's
good.
pretty close. It's pretty close. But even in those town hall settings, what's interesting is that more men will get up to ask the question than women.
Mm.
You ever notice that? And I was in one down in south, actually, central southern, I guess. And there was 3 guys, and they wanted this presentation done in that town hall setting instead of like the home setting, because there was going to be a number of people there. And
Where was
so
it?
I did. That one was just outside of Czar, and so and I used the PowerPoint that I created for those circumstances, because there's just too many people to do it with the page. So I was using the PowerPoint, and in that particular one, there was 3 guys that they came after me pretty good. They were very aggressive in their questioning, and they were challenging me on what I was saying, and I was snapping it right back at them. It was just fine. But most women can't. They're not comfortable with that. And there was one lady in there. She was getting very defensive for me. Like, she was ready to take these 3 boys out and tune their clocks, but it kind of prevented the ladies from asking their questions. So I had to afterwards go up to some of the ones that, you see on their facial expressions that they're not quite, something's not quite sitting with them right. And so afterwards I went up and said, is there anything you want to chat about or clarify? And so that's the difference between when there's more men than women in the room. It's what can happen.
Interesting. Actually, and that's funny because it's right there in the name of Alberta Women's Independence Network. Well, in a more setup, it's not very often that you see a group targeting women, when in reality it's more like let's do a town hall and we'll do the rest, right? So
Yeah.
well, so I think that's going to be good, fantastic. Just asking you before moving to the presentation, are you guys on any social media or any links in there, something to that effect?
Yeah, we have a Facebook page. We are on X. We have a YouTube channel. Kathy and I have done a number of videos, the 2 of us discussing particular issues, but also we've done a series we call it the X Factor, Women's Voices on Alberta Independence, and where we interviewed just women that we've met in our travels, kind of asking them, like, what brought you to Alberta independence? Like, what was the one thing? What was the moment? And hearing their story, and that's been a really amazing experience. So that's on YouTube, and we have an email address. We don't have a website yet. I keep thinking we got to get on that, but for now we don't.
I'm just looking at the website right now. I'm basically on. I'm looking currently at your not Facebook, but rather on. I'm currently looking on YouTube, and I see some videos there. One of them that were made. I think you were interviewed the ladies from Madison, and I'm going to share the screen just a little bit here, so you can actually see the Facebook, the YouTube page as well. So this is what they have here.
No, you've got the sheet up, Max. There it is.
So there it is, the Alberta Independence Network, right there. So you can see some of interviews. And my understanding that what you're trying to do is to interview women, right?
Yeah, you can see that one that we did, the second one there on the top. We did that one with Ted Byfield. Not Ted Byfield, Vince Byfield, sorry. Yeah. Just because he had done this Facebook post that had really touched us, and we wanted to ask him more of the backstory about that. but you can see like most of the other ones with that the green blue background. That's the series of interviews that we've done with different women across the province.
Ah, I see. Interesting. Very. Oh, I see Lynn Hambley there.
Yeah.
Vince Byfield, good guy, by the way. That's
Oh
good.
yeah.
All right. So we're going to the presentation.
Sure.
Let's do it.
Fantastic. So I'm going to switch that to page 1, and the floor is yours.
You want to start, Kathy, or do you want me to?
You go for it, and then I'll pop in.
Okay, so when we get together in people's homes or even at smaller town hall meetings, like Kathy said, when she does the bigger meetings, she does have slides, but this is the sheet that we hand to folks, and I just hand it out. I don't say anything. And for a lot of these ladies and gentlemen, it's the first time that they've ever actually taken a really close look at how our Senate and our House of Commons is set up. And I just wait for the reaction. And oftentimes the reactions can be pretty funny. We'll get people, there'll be some expletives like when they start to look at it, like, what is this? Or like the math ain't mathing, that type of thing. And so I just ask a simple question. I say, where do these numbers come from? So the top map is the Senate seats by region. So by province, how many seats in the Senate each province has. And then on the bottom, it's the House of Commons seats, and how many House of Commons seats each province has. And so I just say, how did we come up with these numbers? Where did these numbers come from? And the one and only guess that we ever get is that, well, it's by population, right? And it's not. It's not. And so I always start with the House of Commons. Now, with the House of Commons seats, population does play a role in it. However, there are only 3 provinces out of 10 where it is strictly population that determines the number of seats in the House of Commons. And those 3 are BC, Alberta, and Ontario. Okay. Every other one has various clauses applied to the equation, which determines how many seats they have. So, for example, if we look at the maritime provinces, we have New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI. Let's just take PEI, for example. PEI does not have anywhere close to the right number of people to warrant having 4 seats in the House of Commons. But the senatorial clause is what is applied to PEI's formula. And the senatorial clause states that no province will have fewer House of Commons seats than they have in the Senate. So when we look at the top there and we look at the number of seats that PEI has in the Senate, they have 4. Therefore, they are given 4 seats in the House of Commons, even though their population doesn't come anywhere close to being able to sustain that number. There's also a grandfather clause. Now, the grandfather clause, from what I've been able to figure out, it's a little hard to find information on it online, but in 1985, they kind of drew a line in the sand and they said, okay, so the number of seats that every province has in the House of Commons right here, that's never going to go below the number that it is right now. And that's called the grandfather clause. Now, they have from time to time changed the grandfather clause. And they did this last election. And so what happens is every 10 years, there is a census across Canada. And after that census is taken, each region forms a committee and they look at the census results. Has our population grown or has it diminished in the last 10 years? Has it grown enough or diminished enough that it should affect our seats in the House of Commons? And then they submit a report to the House of Commons we know we need more seats here, we need less seats here, that type of thing. Well, in this last go around, so this would have been 2022, the year after the last census, Quebec, the committee for Quebec was holding out. They would not submit their report to the House of Commons. And it finally came out the reason they were stalling is because Quebec's population had diminished so much over the last 10 years that they should have lost a seat.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that incident, and I remember that a lot because, well, for those people who know me in the audience, I used to live there in Quebec.
Yeah.
And there was this, and I know for a fact that since the scamdemic, they lost a lot of people. Probably like 100,000 citizens they lost. Quebec was splitting people since the scamdemic. And then after this scamdemic, they made the census. And because the census was asking questions like, do you live with somebody who got vaccinated? They were actually asking very, very concise questions like, are you a member of a religious community? Were you vaccinated or not? So people, including myself, did not ask that question on the census at all. People said, no, screw it, we're not going to answer. They were even as far as harassing people to their front doors to fill the census. And many people said, no, we're not going to do it. So that's probably what caused the imbalance. I'm just telling you what happened.
I would think so. I mean, Quebec was particularly harsh during that time. My daughter was living in Montreal, and I was astounded at what they were kind of going through there. So they were supposed to lose a seat, but they didn't want to. And so they changed, the House of Commons, our MPs changed the grandfather clause to arrange it so that Quebec would not lose that seat. So, and I always ask the question, like, why would they do that? And it's basic math. It comes down to math. When we look at the right-hand side of that chart, on the right-hand side of that black line, and we look at the number of seats in the House of Commons, and then we look at the number of seats on the left-hand side in Western Canada, we see that any politician who can do math knows that if they want to make government, or if they want to stay in government, they must get those votes in Eastern Canada. They must. Otherwise, they simply will not make government or stay in government. And it's as basic as that. So that's the House of Commons. You can see, like, Alberta, we gained 3 seats in this last election because the growth of our province. British Columbia gained 1, Ontario gained 1. And of course, Quebec kept their 1 undeserved seat. But then we go up to the Senate, and Kathy, do you want to explain the Senate? I usually mess up the Maritimes. So if you want to explain it.
Sure. So we can see the seats, and again, they're a little heavier on one side than on the other. As far as the number of Senate seats, we need to remember that these senators are all appointed, so we don't get to vote them in. Alberta tries. We do vote for our senators, but the Prime Minister just merely takes that as a suggestion and typically doesn't do anything with it, just appoints who they want. So we can see going from west to east that the Western provinces each have 6, Ontario and Quebec each have 24. The Maritimes collectively have got 24. And then Newfoundland, they were the last ones to come into Confederation. So they negotiated 6 seats. They said, oh, well, each of the Western provinces have 6. 6 sounds good to us too. And so all of those seats, now these numbers don't change. It doesn't matter what your population does. These numbers stay the same. They are in stone, which is why I often only sort of half joke that Prince Edward Island, having 4 senators and 4 MPs, really only needs to have 8 adults who are all Canadian citizens live on there, and 4 of them could be MPs and 4 of them could be senators. That's how our Constitution is written. That's how stupid it is. And that's why the numbers are so close together between the MPs and the senators. And the other thing to consider with these senators is that because they are appointed, the way that it worked out is that all but a handful are Trudeau appointees right now. All
Yep.
but a handful are Trudeau appointees. So the last federal election, and now this snap one perhaps that we're going to see again this spring, we'll find out. People are going, oh, if Pierre wins, another conservative, that's all we need, and everything is going to be fine. Well, no, it isn't. Because everything that goes through one house has to go through the other. So nothing is going to pass through the Senate if they don't like it, which means we're still no further ahead. We're no further ahead. It doesn't matter. That's how our system is set up. And the senators that we have right now, look them up for Alberta. And there's two in particular who don't think very highly of their fellow Albertans at all.
I think I know who we're talking about, and one of them I think it's a lady, one of those senators I think, and just recently she said that the Liberal government should absolutely need to ban X because it's well, whatever, they don't like they don't agree with the content showing up on there. That's another thing another thing is that if you're following this stream, make sure to share that to other people and also to subscribe to many platforms as possible. Just FYI. This is not just valid just for FCAL, but for other podcasters as well. And also this senator, she said that talking about independence are essentially a bunch of nonsense. So she's very leaning liberal on her point of views. Which is sad because they're appointed liberal they're appointed by the federal government, and they have a very distinct point of view towards Albertans and the West.
They do, and we can't vote them out.
Mm-hmm.
We can't replace them. They're there until they're 75 or die or do something really dumb. So there's no getting rid of them. It's completely the deck is literally stacked against us to be able to get anywhere or to go any further. So when people say, well, we have to just fix it, Kathy, fix it, Angela, figure it out, get play nice with everybody else. I actually had somebody say to me on X the other day, on LinkedIn, sorry, well, you guys just need to try harder.
Wow.
Are you kidding me?
We sent the Reform Party, Western Canada sent the Reform Party to Ottawa as the official opposition. And their main thing was a Triple E Senate. Elected, equal, effective. Which it is none of those things right now. And they were the official opposition and they could not get it changed. So tell me how a couple of chicks out here are going to get it changed, that we just need to try harder. It can't be changed.
It can't. And furthermore, then we sent Harper. Remember? The West was in. We were in. We had Harper in as prime minister. Holy moly, there were so many hangovers the day after around here because everybody thought, that's it. We're finally free. He couldn't do it either. We've tried.
Yeah.
We've tried. So it's time to move on and figure out something else.
And oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, you go ahead, Max, because I was going to say that's where we go into the next part of our presentation. But
yeah, and that's precisely what folks like Michael Wagner was saying. Like all this injustice that happened in the last 50 years was already tried. And the only way that Alberta can actually have this fair game and have some respect from each other is by leaving Canada at this point. There's no way.
Unfortunately, that's the truth. Yeah. Because you would hope that the rest of Canada would look at the situation, look at these numbers and go, yeah, okay, that 24 in Ontario, 24 in Quebec, that's going all the way back to 1867. When we had Upper and Lower Canada, it made sense. Upper Canada gets 24, Lower Canada gets 24. And then, the Maritimes, they negotiate their way in. They know that they are small, that they will never be able to come anywhere close to the amount of population and influence that Ontario and Quebec had. So they said, we want 24 between us. Okay, fine, you can have that. The Western provinces are a completely different story. BC, there was some negotiation. Manitoba, some negotiation. Alberta and Saskatchewan, there was zero negotiation. We were granted 6, and we were basically colonized.
Yeah.
And so, again, like, you would hope that the rest of Canada would be able to look at the numbers and go, okay, this just doesn't make sense. Let's make this better. But if they did that, they would be giving up that seat of power that is sitting in the East, and they weren't willing to do that. And so now here we are. Here we are. It was a simple solution, but here we are. And so what are our options now? There are 2 things that we can do within the legal framework of Canada. One is, and I always have fun with this one, because people are like, oh, okay, good. Let's see what we can do to fix it. You need to get 7 out of 10 provinces to agree to open up Confederation. That 7 out of 10 has to represent 50% of the population of Canada, which means you have to have Ontario or Quebec on board to meet that 50% requirement. And I say, so which 7 provinces are we going to get? And they realize real quick it's not going to happen. Right?
And just the population perspective, like, just the population perspective, 50% of the population are in Ontario, who are the federalists. Like, if you go to Ontario, you're in Ontario. Quebec, the same with the language barrier. They don't know what they're talking about right now, right? They're all watch CBC and all those guys. I can tell from experience. And at the same time, so you're talking about 70% population of the province that need to be aligned to open the Constitution, and 50%.
Yeah. Never going to happen.
That's going to happen. It's not going to happen. That is only to allow to open the Constitution.
That's right.
Right. And to kind of renegotiate things. So we know that's not going to happen. So then that takes us to the Clarity Act. And, in 1995, Quebec held their last referendum on separation. It failed just barely. After that, the government of the day went to the Supreme Court, basically with a reference question, is called. It wasn't necessarily a case, it was a reference question. The question was, does a province in Canada have the right to unilaterally secede from Confederation? It took a couple of years, but the Supreme Court did come back with an answer, and it was basically no, unless you meet these 2 requirements. You must hold a referendum in the province with a clear majority, and that referendum must have had a clear question on it. Because when you look at the Quebec referendum question, it was a paragraph. It had it
was awful.
All these different layers of if and then. I think had they actually been successful, we'd still be in court trying to figure out what exactly it was that they had decided on, because it was just a mess. And so those 2 requirements, once those requirements are met, once a province has held a referendum with a clear majority, now they do not state what a clear majority is, and that may be problematic. But I think, and I've heard others say that probably if you got over 60%, you could make the argument that that's a clear majority. If it's less than that, we might have a bit of a fight on our hands. Once that happens, then all the provincial governments, the federal government, and the First Nations of the province that held the referendum are required to come together in negotiation
In good faith
to negotiate what's going to happen, how this is going to happen.
Some more question about the First Nations, because this is something that people send me they send me by private messaging and DMs and stuff about this fact that, okay, we're doing the referendum stuff. We're collecting signatures to trigger in a referendum in accordance to the Clarity Act, and then the First Nations will have to get consulted. Now, the counter argument that what we're seeing is that the First Nations, at least the chiefs, should I say, are stating that they were not consulted. Is that What's your
There's no
response?
consultation. There's no consultation. There's no, that's not how this works. They are obligated to come to the table and negotiate, but they're not, it's not a consultation. And what I really, really love about this movement is it has pushed that conversation right up into everybody's faces, whether they want to have it or not. And what we're learning is that, yeah, the chiefs are losing their minds about this whole referendum, but the people, our fellow Albertans that live on those reserves, by and large, are embracing this idea. They're coming out to sign that petition.
And what a great idea to actually, including everybody, including those people living in reserves who are living in abject poverty, to join the discussion. So it's just the chiefs who are pushing back, primarily because they're getting money from the federal government. Is that right?
Probably. We don't know.
Always follow the money.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we don't know, but at least the people living in those places, at least they're voicing their opinions, which is good. Shall we go to the next slide?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is always a bit of a shock to people when they compare, PEI per senator. It's 44,000 so many people per senator. Now we look at Alberta, 814,000 people per senator. So that you just can't argue with that. Like that's just completely so off base, in a country that is supposedly democratic and fair. And the same with the House of Commons seats, right? So oftentimes when people see this, their jaws hit the floor, and it's pretty eye-opening.
This is one of those moments when I'm doing the presentation in a big setting with like hundreds of people, and then I have it so that each one of these numbers comes up individually, right? Max, you've seen it. And when I get to the Alberta numbers, both with the Senate seat and the House of Commons, you can literally hear a pin drop in the room. Like it's quiet.
Oh yeah, they're actually are very shocked, and quite honestly, that's the part where people actually get, I wouldn't say upset, but they got a shock of reality. That's where the rubber meets the road and say, well, yeah.
That's
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just killing some trolls off on YouTube right now.
Oh, very good.
Fantastic.
Tell them to stay on there and help the algorithms.
Oh yeah, I get in all those trolls right now, so I think it's kind of common practice and right now to actually check in what they're doing, and yeah.
Well, while you're fighting with them, we'll give you a little more fodder here.
Sure.
This quote from Sir Clifford Sifton, 1904. So he was the Minister of the Interior, but he was also the MP for Brandon, Manitoba, when he gave this speech. And he said, "We desire, every patriotic Canadian desires, that the great trade of the prairie shall go to enrich our own people in the East, to build up the factories and the workshops of Eastern Canada, and to contribute in every way to its prosperity." And that was the attitude before Alberta and Saskatchewan even became provinces. And it's the attitude that continues. And we see that continually with, the problems with equalization now, and all the mental gymnastics that people out East are willing to do to justify the equalization system. And there is no justification for it.
Well, and it's even more than that. People like equalization is the easy one to go for, because that works out to anywhere between $4,000 and $6,000 per Albertan per year that we pay in. So, family of four, what could you do with another $20,000 this year?
Yeah.
From the people that are calling you a traitor. What could you do with that money? There's nothing. You see the numbers up there from the seats, like how many people per each of those seats, whether it's the senator or the MPs. You can't change it by our votes. We don't have the votes. It's not there. But it's not even just the equalization. We also subsidize the CPP. And people don't understand that. They say, oh, well, whatever you put in, you get out. No, actually, that's not how that works. You need to go and do some homework about how that works. We subsidize that Ponzi scheme, which is why we need to get out of it. And then furthermore, we've got this stupid thing called employment insurance when it should be called unemployment insurance. Go back to what it is. You don't need insurance when you have a job. You need it when you don't. And I don't have any problem with that social program. It's come in very handy for a good many people. But when we ask how many Albertans have ever received a dime off of that, let me tell you, it's pretty quiet in the room. It's pretty quiet. So we're subsidizing the East with that as well. Not only that, the federal government made it easier for the folks in the East to qualify for that program than for us. Albertans have to work longer hours in order to qualify. And if you dare make too much money the next year, you have to pay it back. You have to pay your own money back. Like, it's just asinine. It's absolutely asinine. So nothing has changed. Here we are in 2026, and nothing has changed. There's nothing new under the sun, and we can't do anything to make it better.
And what about those people? Like, isn't that true that the own federal government is actually listing the CPP assets as federal assets, so the federal government can actually A, steal from us, and B, use that against to use that money to borrow against.
Yes.
Where are all those? Don't use my CPP people?
That's right. Keep your hands off my pension, people. Like, you have no idea what's happening to your pension.
Oh my gosh.
That's
That is when I think that if you look on scripture, sometimes I go to scripture when I do live stream. When I go on scripture and I look at Hosea 4:6, basically when people were essentially died because of lack of knowledge, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Well, it really is. And I would take that a bit of a step further, Max, is that we're looking at unequal weights and measures, right? Like that, the Lord hates that. The Lord hates unequal weights and measures. And when we look at the way that this country is put together, it's very unequal with regards to weights and measures between the East and the West. They pit us against one another on purpose. And it's not good. We'd make much better neighbors than we ever will as one.
And it just to show you how I always said that the East. I don't like even see this concept of West and East that much, but I think that there is a elaborate effort to keep people in ignorance, because if they knew the history, I personally. One of the guys who actually I got very influenced by when it comes to independent stuff was Michael Wagner, and people who gave me testimony from the NEP area. I met many people from my audience who about my age category. Their parents actually were in the oil patch and they lost their business. They lost their houses. They lost everything during the NEP area. Those people have children on their own, who are about my age category, mid-30s, maybe 40s. And they're talking about independence because of their parents.
Yeah.
And now there's those people who are basically in the fight right now because of the abuse that we know now. But going back in history, like even in your speeches, you were talking about this concept that Alberta and Saskatchewan were basically created by the federal government.
Yeah, we were colonized.
Yeah.
We were colonized, and that's what people don't understand. We were never taught it. I didn't know this until I got into this whole independence movement and started digging around for information myself. And what had happened, how we became a province, is that was our first big boom. We were being advertised as the last best West. Come on up, bring the family. It's the land of milk and honey. And we're going to give you some land. You've got 3 years to do something with it. And if you do, it's yours for free. And people came. They came predominantly from the US, but from Europe as well. And they did that. But they found out pretty quickly that it's really hard to get things done when there isn't any local representation. And so the businessmen said, hey, Haltain, who was our premier at the time, we need some help here. because we don't have email and texting yet, and you're kind of hard to get a hold of when you want us to get all this stuff done. And so they came up with this idea to take Alberta and Saskatchewan, the two provinces as we know them today, and create one province, which would be the province of Buffalo. That was the plan. This is what they were discussing in 1904. And so Haultain took that idea to Ottawa, where I like to say all great ideas go to die. And they got upset and said, no way. Because with that population boom happening, if they get bigger than us, the balance of power is going to shift.
Yeah.
And that's what they said. They owned it. And so what they did was take all those little territories that we were, little districts of the province of the Northwest Territories, and they created Alberta and they created Saskatchewan. And it's just an act. It's the Alberta Act of 1905 and the Saskatchewan Act of 1905. There was no talking, no negotiation. Nobody sat at the table, and we were appointed our first premier, who was a Liberal.
Sad, isn't it?
That's how we became a province. So yeah.
If you have questions, though, we're going to have a Q&A session at the end. If you have comments, just put it on the chat, and we're going to pick them up after the speech. Just FYI for people who are watching on the audience right now.
Yeah, so basically, Max, it comes down to that last point that you can see on the sheet there, where it says, until these inequalities are addressed, Western Canada will continue to be exploited, ignored, and taken advantage of. So this is what we believe the basis of the problem to be, and this is why this is not a pipeline issue. Alberta independence is not a pipeline issue. It goes right back to the very beginnings of this province and how we were brought in and how we have been treated ever since.
Absolutely. And that's funny because you were talking about the influx of immigration coming primarily from the United States and Europe. I remember a while ago I was watching a live stream, or was doing a live stream and Tim Hoven was there. And he was making a history class to people about how Canada became Canada. And one of the things that he'd mentioned was that in Eastern Canada, particularly Quebec and Ontario, those loyalists that ended up living in those areas actually moved from the United States after the Civil War, I believe.
Yeah.
No, not Civil War, but the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
So we have all those areas. Like if you live in Quebec, there is an area called the Eastern Townships. That's what I used to live in Eastern Townships in Sherbrooke, just probably 50 miles off of the west border. We call the Eastern Townships, and they inherit the way of doing things from the States, from the British colony to Canada. So even from a demographic perspective, Eastern Canada was settled by British settlers.
Yeah.
From the colony, from Britain, from British colony, who have this concept of the Westminster system, who are very anti-American, while in Western in Alberta and Saskatchewan is the opposite.
Yeah.
You can see the difference right off the bat, how people just interact in Eastern Canada much more. They give a lot more weight to the state.
Yeah.
While in here it's much more entrepreneurial, hands on deck. I remember one of my pastors actually told me that in here in Alberta, it's very common for people to start a side business while they have their day job.
Mm-hmm.
In Eastern Canada, at least in Quebec, if you start a business, you're basically a thief, a criminal, somebody who needs to be eradicated from the face of the earth. That's the impression that I got.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's just a very different mindset, and it comes from our different histories. Living in Southern Alberta, part of when Alberta was brought into Confederation, or they were considering it, and they knew that they needed to be able to use this land, and it was the irrigation system.
Mm-hmm.
And it was members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons in Utah, that had taken a desert and made it habitable with their irrigation system. They were actually contracted by the federal government. The Canadian federal government contracted with that church to send their members up to this area to build the irrigation system. And that's why all throughout southern Alberta, there's all these little tiny towns of Mormons. And that's because, and it's, if you look on the map, it's all along the irrigation canals that these little tiny towns were. Many of them came up. They were families, you know, husbands, wives, and whatever, came up to work on the irrigation system, and they just stayed afterwards. And some of the largest ranches that we have in southern Alberta are owned by members of that church still, because it's been passed down, of course, to their family members. But that was a large portion of, and a large reason why Alberta was able to
survive
and become the ranching communities, because we have this very intricate, widespread irrigation system that was basically built by Americans who had been contracted to come up and do it.
Isn't that interesting how the cultural differences between Eastern Canada and Western Canada? That's funny. I was looking at the comment section. There were some people. There's a guy living from Sherbrooke. Luc Couture, salut. Si telo. Well, the rare things that people speaking French. I don't know. But anyways, but that's good to see the difference between the influence between the United States and Eastern Canada. The difference, how, like, this is an example about the irrigation system in southern Alberta. I didn't know that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, Max, there's so much history in this province. There's so much amazing history of just people ready to roll up their sleeves, get together, and get to work to get things done.
Oh, hold on a second. I'm going to try to get a book. I'm going to step out of my chair.
Sure.
I guess we'll just take over the show, Angela.
Sounds good to me.
All right.
Oh, yeah. You got to see this. This is a book that I got as a gift when I was living in Regina. I got this book. So this is the Alberta and the Saskatchewan book. So it's called Alberta History Along the Way. So this is the Alberta version.
Yeah.
Which I got it from Amazon, right? But my first book was this one here, which is the Saskatchewan version.
Oh my!
And I got this. I purchased the Saskatchewan version when I was living in Saskatchewan, because I stayed there for a while. And when you look at the history of Saskatchewan, there are some mentions about the irrigation system, something along those lines on the southern end of the province. So I'm going to take a look at those books. This book, by the way, was supposed to... So basically the purpose of those books is for road trippers like myself who like to hook up a Starlink dish and go across the province. Yeah. And they basically show you, okay, this town here in Alberta, this is what they were doing. This town here on this end, they were doing this. So it's like a history book for people who like to travel across the provinces and basically learn what this town was doing back days, how it was constituted, and all those things. But I'm definitely going to take a look at the southern area of the provinces and learn more about the American influence of those books. So if you want to take a screenshot of those books for people who are watching the audience right now. Yeah, so Saskatchewan
history along the highway. Oh, along the highway. Okay, yeah.
So that's the Saskatchewan one. And so I got this book when I was living in Saskatchewan. And this is the book from Alberta. I got it from Amazon.
Yeah.
And there's no way you can actually find this. You have to find this thing used. But it's very interesting to see. If I were to Alberta and I found, let's say, you see, it's actually made from archives from the provincial government. You see the Alberta.
Oh, there you go.
Right there.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to give you this book, at least the ISBN, so you can look that up. But right now on page 224, Waterhole on Dovengan Peace River Trail, Highway 2, 3 miles south of Fairview. Right.
I was just up there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's so cool. That'd be very interesting.
That is one of those very very rare books that you find it at a thrift store, and when you look at this, you don't pay too much attention until we actually talk about history. I'm a huge history guy, so I like to read this kind of those books. But the American influence in Western Canada is something that really distinguishes between East and West, and to deny it is just denying your history.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And like Max, like if it's dark now, but if I could see, I'd look out my window. I'd be looking right at Chief Mountain, which is in Montana. Like I'm literally 15 miles from the Montana-Alberta border. And in the community I live in, almost every single family has some kind of a connection to the States. Whether like myself, my husband is American. Many of my neighbors, at least one of the spouses is American. They vacation in the States. They have family in the States. You know, like there's just this huge connection that they just don't seem to understand out East. And it's not like what we're going to turn our backs on our families and on our history because of elbows up. Like that's just not going to happen.
No, actually. And even in Quebec, there was a small town. If there's some people from Quebec watching the live stream, because they know this, they will probably already know right about this little town called Stamstead, which is also on the Vermont side of things called Derby Lane. So basically, there's this little town called Stamstead. During the scamdemic, they had basically the city was sliced in half. One end was in States, one end was in Canada, or Quebec, should I say. So what they did during this scamdemic was there were a lot of problems that happened, but one of the things they did is that during this scamdemic, if you have a Canadian passport, if you're at the city library, the little town, they have a public library there, one exit was in the United States, the other exit was in Canada. So if you're coming from Quebec, you have to have your Canadian passport. If you dare to exit to this end of the library, you're basically in the United States. And it's going it's going as far as there's this still instance that there was this little road called Can USA Road, which basically the road itself is literally on the Canadian-US border. So one side of the road, you're in States, your neighbor across the street, it's in Canada.
Oh my goodness.
Wild.
So who those people don't necessarily know or deny the influence of the American, the influence of the United States within Canada.
Yeah.
Well, Stansted. I see there's some people from Quebec watching this. It brings me back memories.
Right on.
Yeah, that's good. So basically, if you go to the slides a little bit, that's what we're talking about. This concept of, even we're talking 1967 and the 10 provinces, and also the American heritage, the influence from the European settlers from Alberta and Saskatchewan. Exactly, right.
Exactly. And that's my history, right? And Angela's is from the US, mine is from Europe. And so to see them come over on my dad's side, my grandmother's family narrowly escaped Holodomor coming over here, right? And the hardships that they went through, the stories that got passed down are just remarkable, absolutely remarkable. And then on my mom's side, is same idea, just different countries in Europe, but over they came. So by the time my generation shows up, we're just all Heinz 57s of all of these different European countries. But but it turns out pretty good because all of them have really good food, and so here we are enjoying all of that. But
that's awesome,
right? Even that history, when I dug into it a little bit, and it was the homesteading up here that they needed to do and were challenged with, and how like living literally in sod huts, not even in a house, like in a sod hut for the winter with their
Mm-hmm.
kids, trying to get things figured out, and in order to make some money, the husband would go away and leave the wife behind with a couple of little ones, and hope that when he comes back at the end of winter, everything is still okay, that he had done a good enough job of making sure there was enough wood for her and enough meat, and the garden had produced enough to be able to sustain everybody. That's what this province was built on.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Hard
what this
work.
province, hard work, ingenuity, get to know your neighbor, help one another out, make sure everybody is okay. That's what we were built on, no matter where the people came from.
Yeah.
And it's just so much more evident to me every single day that that's the values kind of disconnect, if you will. And I heard it again today. I was listening to a for and against conversation on
Mm-hmm.
Spotify. Actually, you were mentioning Spotify earlier. I was listening to a for and against conversation earlier today, and the guy who's completely against Alberta independence and says no, this is a terrible idea, when the one who was for Alberta independence says, but we don't need government. We don't need as much government as we have. Like, Albertans help people. Go to any rural neighborhood and you'll see people's names on plaques because they all got together to build something together. They didn't rely on the government to do it. And this guy who thought that it's just crazy to think about leaving Canada, you could see the cognitive disconnect. He just, it didn't even occur to him that neighbors would get together to build a hospital, that neighbors would get together to build a school, that neighbors would get together to put up another neighbor's barn. He just he couldn't wrap his head around it. And I thought, oh my goodness, my son, you have missed out on so much in life,
Oh
on
yeah.
how much joy you get by getting together with absolute strangers to get something done for your community.
What I've heard from people who are living in the States, they are very enthusiastic and very interested on this concept of Alberta, should I say, or Western independence, if you look a little further. But there are a lot of people from Canada right now, in the States right now,
Mm-hmm.
and they are completely like, no, we don't talk about it. Like the subject so taboo from Canadians in the States. But
Yeah.
all the Americans right now, they're like, oh my God, that's so awesome. That's so cool to see. Almost like little cousins bringing together.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's true, but I think that's that different mentality, right? The American mentality is very get her done, kind of let's go, let's make it happen. And I guess a lot of the folks that are down there from Canada are maybe predominantly from the East and don't share that same sentiment.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And one thing I kind of like about this idea of independence, should I say, I know it's not on the slides, but there are lots of problems in society that are being significantly worsened by Ottawa stepping out in provincial jurisdiction by, like, it's not normal for Alberta to get money from Ottawa when they're like healthcare transfer tax and all that stuff, when it's in fact the provincial jurisdiction. Alberta should receive no money from Ottawa at any kind for that specific purpose, since healthcare is a provincial jurisdiction and all of those things. And our opponents on the Forever Canadian side of things are essentially saying, oh, Alberta elected a conservative government for 40 years and then those people never fix anything. We tried, but what's happening with Ottawa is they're systematically making the situation worse.
Mm-hmm. No
How are your
doubt.
things on that? On everything, really.
Yeah, absolutely everything. And the problem is, like you said, like they're kind of reaching into jurisdiction. I was having a conversation actually with elderly neighbors today that wanted to sign the petition. So I brought it over and sat down, and they were telling me about some of the issues that they have with healthcare, and they didn't understand it. And so we talked about the fact that yes, healthcare is a provincially administered program. However, we are under the Canadian Health Act, and so we're very limited in what we can do, and our hands are basically tied as to the changes we can make. There was a time when Ralph Klein, back in the 90s, wanted to make some changes, and Jean Chrétien threatened him that he would withhold some of the health transfers. I mean, the money that we sent to Ottawa,
Right.
instead of sending it back to us to be able to administer the health program, was going to withhold it if Mr. Klein did not change, his approach on some of these things. And we're looking at, I know Danielle Smith came in with great expectations and great aspirations as to what to do with the health situation, the healthcare situation in Alberta. And I just wonder, honestly, I haven't looked into it a lot, but I wonder how much are our hands tied? Like, how much change can we actually make? I don't think it's a lot.
It isn't.
It's a lot at all.
No, it isn't. And that's what people don't understand. Even during the mandates, we won't say the C word, but during the mandates, people were going, oh, well, healthcare is provincial. So it's all the provinces that are making all of this happen. Correct. However, the feds were saying, if you don't do ABC, XYZ, you're not getting your funding back.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And also another thing about, and we've seen during the scamdemic once again, is that a lot of those policies regarding the GB jab and all those things, they're decided at the federal level, top down. Like, if Alberta were this independent country with real conservative values, we would not have to deal with everything that happened during Jason Kenney's administration, which I think was atrocious, even from a guy who used to live back east, right? Yeah. There are a lot of federal imposed policies that are being selected from a top-down position, like healthcare, the WHO stuff. I remember the CFIA was talking about implementing a cattle registration, I believe. Another thing from the feds, everything. And so what the feds are doing right now is more control. And what bothers me as somebody who's paying taxes is that all those decisions come from Ottawa without asking Albertans or Saskians to that regard about everything that's happened. People who are on the ground, literally feeding the cows,
Yeah.
Exactly. So the thing that by Alberta becoming its own country is going to set up a precedent on relationships right now. And it's going to create a domino effect. I believe it's going to create a domino effect across all provinces as well, too.
I believe so. And it's an effect that is needed, Max. There is a principle of government where it basically states, like, the closer the government is to the people, the more accountable they are to the people. And Canada should never have been formed into one country. Based on that one principle alone, that they cannot govern effectively and represent effectively in a country the size of Canada. It should have been at a minimum 4 countries. And when you look at our culture and the differences between this vast country, you could easily see where those 4 countries should have been set up, and those governments would have been much closer to the people and therefore held much more accountable to the people, with way less corruption or making it much more difficult to become corrupt.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the federal government trying to lure municipal administrations into doing things against the public. Like, I'm in Edmonton, so we have this thing called this LRT stuff that nobody actually takes. like they're building a new lane from downtown Edmonton to Stony Plain or something along the fact, or Spruce Grove, I believe. It's causing massive chaos on the street right now.
Yeah.
They built this line on Millwoods, which is on the south side of the city, right? And I look at the numbers, and they projected. So basically what happened with the LRT line within Millwoods, they projected like 10 times the amount of people that they actually had on the ground, taking the bus, taking public transit. And because of that, the city of Edmonton, from my understanding, I'm not fully sure on that, but there's basically the tax money that was spent to build those LRT lines is so high that the city of Edmonton has to take part of the cost of operations at their own expense, and that is increasing taxes here in the city. But all that money is essentially paid by the federal government, bypassing the cities, the province altogether.
Wow.
Crazy.
So yeah, absolutely. I think we're done with these slides, and let's going to talk about a little thing on the questions that we have here. One of them is the immigrant community. I think Caddy was going. Actually, you spoke to a group of Filipinos.
Kind of, yeah. I got to be on a podcast with a gentleman who was very prominent in the Filipino community here in Edmonton, and it was really incredible because the Filipino community is a very tight knit community. They're lovely, right? They're just lovely, and so polite and so kind and so nice, and their food is so good. And they also don't really get involved in politics a lot, because in the Philippines, politics is nasty, puts us to absolute shame. And so this guy's thought, you know what, there's this independence movement going on. I need to help my people understand what it's about. So he had me on his podcast, which was really fun, teaching him about, well, sorry, you've been duped. Here's what you moved to. You were lied to. And so he says, well, I want you to come and tell more people. So he's going to be holding a private function for kind of his Filipino community later on this month that he invited me to come and speak at. So I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that.
When's that? I think it was in 19, right?
Something like that, yeah. Yeah, something like that. But even going around the province, like the two tours that I've done so far, and all the speaking that Angela and I have been doing in people's homes since March, the immigrant community gets it. They are seeing what born and raised Albertans are not always seeing. And I even just heard this the other day. Remember in Leduc, right? There was that lady from China, and she got up and was very emotional and said, you guys don't know what's coming. I've seen this before. You don't understand. Like, you've got to wake up. And it was such a reminder to me that, Angela and I try to be the happy warriors and not make light of everything, but not always get all down in the dumps. But the passion in her voice reminded me just how serious this is.
Absolutely. And I know personally people who came from very bad countries. Essentially in Canada we have lots of corruption, lots of elbows up everywhere, lots of corruption, lots of woke ideology and all that stuff going on. But what those guys are suffering, what they've been through is out of this world, basically. And these are the guys, and this is the things that they're basically warning us about, right?
That's it. They are.
Have you ever asked this question to those immigrants if you have a back chat conversation with them? Have you ever asked about how do they feel about moving to Canada from a war-torn country? seeing the same corruption as they left.
Yeah. Yeah. I've met a number of folks through what we've been doing and just being involved in the movement from former Eastern Bloc countries. And so often, well, they're all on board. They're all on board because, many of them, it wasn't that long ago that they were still under communism, And so many of them, like my age or older, so I'm in my mid-50s, so mid-50s or older, they remember very clearly what it was to live under communism and how happy they were to escape that, to come to Canada, whether it was defecting before communism was lifted or soon afterwards. And some of the very strongest voices that I've seen for Alberta independence are these folks from these former Eastern Bloc countries, because they see, just like you said, they see exactly what's coming. They recognize it. They have a sixth sense for it because they lived under it. And they're appalled and scared for Canadians who cannot or will not see it. And it does make me wonder about Thomas Lukaszuk. Like
Fabio?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing.
Fabio?
Under communism,
Fabio.
Yes. There are those who are oppressed, and there are those who benefit from the oppression, right? And I have to wonder, I don't want to make any false accusations against Mr. Lukaszuk or his family, but how come he can't see it, but every other Eastern Bloc person that I know does?
Well, and he's from there.
That's what I'm saying.
His family escaped Poland, for heaven's sake.
That's what I'm saying. Why can he not see it? Or did he have a different experience under communism than my friends? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things and that's exactly the reaction we get from people in the immigrant community, primarily because of lack of knowledge. But just in case you know, I'm going to interview a gentleman of the name of Igor Rizlev, who was with me just about earlier this week doing a town hall meeting. He was live streaming with me a town hall meeting from Calgary, right, on Alberta independence. He's from Ukraine, a real estate agent he lives in Calgary, but he is from Ukraine originally. And he's getting a lot of pushback from lots of people, primarily because of him, from the fact that he was in fact an immigrant, like myself, right? But the thing is that it's cool to see the immigrant community actually raising up and knowing what's actually going on. But on the other hand, I feel bad for them because they were duped, like going to Canada as a way to escape communism, right? And all of a sudden, those communist ideas, they come to Canada from the very countries they escaped.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. That's why we need all voices, right? People are forever like, oh, who's the leader of this? Who's the leader of this? Well, you know what? Albertans are the leader of this movement. We need everybody's voices to share their stories and their concerns.
Absolutely. We're talking about a lot about the Filipinos and Eastern European countries. Have you approached or been approached by other communities?
Well, I noticed when I was involved with the Wild Rose Independence Party that oftentimes those from India, many of them enjoy politics or want to be involved. They want to serve in their community. So we did see that. Also, I operate a bed and breakfast and get a lot of families, have become really good friends with a lot of families, immigrants from India who love to come down, and we sit around and play cards and stuff, and they come down every year. It's great. But I've had the opportunity to speak to many of them about Alberta independence, and they're often very curious as to why why we feel the way we do. And it gives an opportunity to be able to speak to the history that many of them don't understand, exactly how Alberta came to be a province or anything like that. And so it's very enlightening to them. And every time they're like, oh yeah, okay, I totally get it. Like once they know, I guess you don't know what you don't know, but once they know, it's not something that you can basically unsee.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Say, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Absolutely.
Right. No.
Yeah.
That's the internet meme right in front of me. Once you can't see it, you cannot unsee it. Let's go on to another subject, still on immigration, but this is more like what I think was going to happen after a successful referendum on independence is the immigration, but specifically interprovincial immigration. This is something that we'll discuss with Igor in a more great detail because he's a realtor. So he sees the trends like immigration, like the interprovincial immigration from Ontario or to Alberta and vice versa. What do you think is going to happen from a demographic perspective when it comes to the interprovincial immigration after a referendum? Do you see that people will leave Alberta and go to places like Ontario or Quebec, what have you, and other people who are favored conservatism going to potentially move to Alberta? Is this something that you were thinking, or just a thought here?
I think so. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Angela? I guess you and I have never actually talked about that, but
Well, I have a couple different thoughts. So one is people will always go where they feel most comfortable, right? Like we choose to live where we want to be. And there will definitely be a demographic shift. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just people going where they are most comfortable. Now, one thing that makes me crazy is when people compare the Quebec separatist movement with the Alberta independence movement.
They're different.
They're different. They're completely different motivations. Now, I lived in Quebec just a few years before their last referendum, and felt and saw some of the reasoning behind why they wanted to separate. And now I'm living here in Alberta, and I'm part of the Alberta independence movement. Now, something that people say is, well, look at how many people left Quebec during that time. Well, okay, hello. Completely different reasons. A lot of the exodus out of Quebec was due to the fact that Montreal had a lot of national corporation head offices they were employing Anglophones. They needed to employ Anglophones because they were national corporations. And because of the reasonings behind that referendum, many of those Anglophones did not feel comfortable any longer living in Quebec, not knowing what was going to happen, right? If Quebec did separate, now you've got, and it's all based on culture. Now you've got these folks who aren't a part of that culture. And what are they going to do? And so those head offices were forced to leave Quebec and move to Toronto or wherever in order to accommodate the fact that they had Anglophone employees and they needed to employ Anglophone employees.
So what you're saying, Angela, is that the Anglophone community in Quebec, specifically on the west side of Montreal, I used to live in Montreal, they basically move out of Quebec because those corporations that had their HQ in Montreal decided to move to Toronto and all those places.
Yes, but that is different than if we see a demographic shift in Alberta. The demographic shift will be based on where people are more comfortable. And I guess you could make the same argument for what happened in Quebec. The Anglophones were not comfortable living in a province that could possibly be leaving Canada based on language and culture. And so maybe it will be based on something different. It'll be based in Alberta. It'll be based on an ideology right? Or it'll be based along political lines, conservative, liberal, that type of thing. But people will go where they are most comfortable. And I don't see anything wrong with that. It does not strike fear in my heart or anything like.
So what you suggest? So what you're stating, Angela, was that the circumstances in Quebec at that time were different, and that's the difference between the independence movement here in Alberta versus what happened over there,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah, because it looks like they're opposites. Like, I haven't lived through that period of time, unfortunately, though I read a lot about that, and it seems that the reaction, what I see here, is that in Quebec they want those who are opposed of Quebec independence at that time. On the Canada side, they were basically saying, "Oh, stay in Canada. We'll treat you well. You have demands. We'll try to fit you in." While in Alberta, it's basically the response was elbows up. .exe. You're a traitor. You're a whatever. You're a troubadour.
Completely different.
Completely different. And we started to see people actually retaliating against those who seek independence. I often say that I'm starting to see it now because right now SFA is doing their canvassing process right now. They're collecting signatures. But I think that the attacks on people who are just doing their part are getting much violent and more violent. I've seen canvassers getting injured. I've seen people who lost their jobs because of Alberta independence, because they align with Alberta independence, right? It's getting to the point when what we see now with Alberta independence is almost like Scamdemic 2.0, right?
Yeah.
Right?
It 100% is. And I say that quite often, that use that opportunity to know that we were prepared. The mandates prepared us for this moment that we're now in. How to stick together, how to stay together, how to figure out who to trust, how to figure out who not to trust. And so here we go. Here we're ready. And I think, no, I'll even be stronger than that. I know that that's why those of us that are in this movement are so fearless. Fired up and fearless. We're like, oh yeah, okay. You wanted me dead 5 years ago. Good enough. So you want me dead again today. What else is new? Like, so we're emotionally ready. We're mentally as ready as we can be without having ever gone through this before. But we did get a bit of a dry run as to what it was going to be like.
Oh, interesting. I like that perspective. It's like the feds, they use this pandemic to push their programs and stuff, and that was the test trial, but it led on to the different direction against them. I don't think they ever actually expected Albertans to use the Clarity Act against them, to be honest.
It was written for Quebec's sake.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah.
Oops. Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. And it's good that we see this demographic change, but I'm not scared of that necessarily. What I'm starting to see is this response from business owners, from customers, employers, who are essentially going to police their employees. Their employees say, "Oh, this guy from Independence, take them out." Just like during this pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry for the.
We are seeing that. I was chatting with a friend the other day who has her own business, and she lost one of her biggest customers because they found out that she was accepting signatures, that she's a she's a canvasser. And so I was like, oh my goodness, and she's like, how do we do this? So just like in the mandates, one foot in front of the other, we rely on one another, and away we go.
Hey, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is something that we'll discuss a little bit with Igor when I'm going to have it on my show on Thursday at 7, by the way. Oh, I thought it was a cat, but no, it's a dog.
There's a dog.
She got too restless waiting for me. So.
Oh, it happens every time I do an interview with somebody. Some cat shows up on the camera, some dog shows on the camera. I don't mind people bring their dogs or cats or whatever in the camera. I think it's funny. Yeah.
Mine came over to say hi, but she didn't hop up, so that was.
Oh, I just don't. No, that's good. So I think we gone to the question. I think to the program today. I just want to check with you if you have something to wrap this up before they close the show.
Just know that Angela and I are still more than willing to go wherever to have the home meetings with whomever. If you've got some people that have got even more questions now that the petition has started and the referendum is just around the corner, but they don't want to go to these other events because maybe it's too big and they're not comfortable in those bigger settings, but want to have more intimate conversations, get a hold of us. And let's have those conversations. Don't be shy. We're good. Doesn't matter. We'll drive wherever. It's all good.
Yeah.
And don't be scared to talk about independence too. Like it's almost like during this pandemic, right? When people were afraid to talk about the jibby jabs and all that stuff. I think that our network has become significantly stronger now, so we can actually talk about it without being hesitation. Yeah, there's gonna be a shift on people's opinions and such and such, but it's part of the deal at this point. So I'm not necessarily scared about it that much. So, any closing remarks, Angela, with the dog? She's
yeah. You know what? We have so much. She
looks so. Oh, she's so relaxed.
Yeah.
How old?
She loves her cuddles. So anytime I'm sitting down and she's not sitting on me, she doesn't like that.
Oh.
But yeah. You know what? Like we just have. There is so much to look forward to, and when we're strong together, that's how we're going to do it. The only way we're going to do this is by standing strong together, and it doesn't matter what they throw at us.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we think it's bad now. It's going to get worse. But the fact of the matter is, this is, as Kathy said, this is a movement that is being led by Albertans. It's not being led by any particular leader right now. It's being led by Albertans, and it's Albertans who will, as we stand together and strengthen each other and stick to our resolve, that we'll be able to do this. And it just makes I'm excited. And I'm excited to see like the grit and resilience of Albertans coming out through this process. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. And I'd like to add a little on my point. This is my a point as well, is that this fight is more than just money. It's more about business opportunities. Yeah. It's more about being opportunistic, should I say. It's about fighting for freedom. Like make sure that your kids or your grandkids or your grandkids, whatever, they get to see or live in a place that was better than the ones you inherit.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right? So it transcends money. It transcends anything that is material. It's more of a spiritual component going on, right? Like I want like you want your grandchildren, your children or your grandchildren to prosper, you know? That has no monetary value at all.
No, there's no price tag on that.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and I would like to also thank everybody who is on the grounds doing what they can as well. And I also want to thank you all for tuning in. That was very cool to see. And I'd like to also shout out to your husbands supporting everything you ladies are doing, because they must say, what's going on here? What's going on? You don't see your husband every time you go on a town hall when you have to go to the next event. They'll ask you, hey, how's it going? So I want to tell to your husbands, thank you very much for staying on the ground and being patient.
Will do.
We will do.
But
Yeah.
but it is fair to say, right? Because a lot of people don't necessarily know the efforts, and all, because we're essentially all soldiers on this battle, should I say? And it's good that you're being supported by family, friends, and all those people around. So
Yeah,
I'd like
that's
to,
great.
And
well,
dogs.
And dogs.
and the dogs and cats and
Yeah.
cats, then and cats or whatever. Yeah, that's good. I don't have pets here, but that's good. I have to basically cat-proof my house.
Oh, there
They
you
don't
go.
want to eat fiber optic cables and
Oh, right.
48 volts everywhere. No, that's good. So thank you very much for your time, ladies. And I would like to thank you also, the people who are watching on the live stream. If you want to contribute to the live stream, you can donate. There's the email address for the e-transfer on the top left section on the screen. I'm also going to implement a subscription system in this week. So if you want to recurrently contribute to the show, you can use your debit or credit card to do that automatically. That's going to be something that will be implemented this week. I have to check something with my one or two providers for that. Don't forget, we just lined it up for Spotify now. So if you're watching your show on your truck, you can actually listen without being interrupted by the video stream that much. And saves bandwidth too. That's kind of lightweight as well too. And also don't forget to follow us on Instagram. The links in the description are below. So you can share that to your younger folks as there as well too. I will be on Wednesday in Rimby from 6 to 9. There's going to be a live stream there. Many speakers such as Chris Scott will be there, Dennis Modry, Michael Wagner, Tanya Rode, and Adam from, it's a new guy, a new kid on the block. He runs a podcast called The Army of Great Men, who is going to be speaking there as well. Yeah, so we'll be live streaming from Rimby. I actually have my Starlink just for that. So in case internet's not the greatest down there, I will be live streaming from Starlink, which is excellent. And don't forget to follow and subscribe. So I'd like to thank you everyone for watching. It's almost 9 p.m. or something.
We've been
that's
talking
good.
a while.
Oh yeah, I've been talking a lot. Absolutely. And I'm gonna release that video on social media, make some clips out of it. Of course, people really enjoy the reels and the clips. That spreads like wildfire. And we'll see you in touch, and hoping for you to see you next time. We'll see you from there. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, Max.
Thanks, Max.
Yay! I'm going to switch over to the transition.